the Bible and the Holobiont. So, today I will try to tell you a story. It's a story which has to do with many things, starting with the Bible, and then we'll say something about biology and about this new concept, this new idea, which is extremely powerful, which is the Holobiont. Holobiont is a biological system, but even more than biological, it's a system where the various elements collaborate with each other. And we could not be human beings without collaborating inside the creature which live inside ourselves, the bacteria, the viruses and whatever, and we collaborate with our fellow human beings. And if we were not collaborating with each other, there could not be such a thing as the Bible. And the Bible does tell us a lot about what we are, how we behave, why we behave in a certain way. So today I'm trying a new method of communication, new for me, and telling you a story, starting from the Bible. Fascinating story, emotional, a little sex, a little violence. So this is how stories are made, and it is the story of Tamar. Tamar was a girl living long ago, maybe in the second millennium or the first millennium before our era. And there are actually two Tamars in the Bible. This is the first one. And how about her marriage and the family of Judah. Judah was one of the patriarchs of the earliest age of the Jewish people and part of the Bible. So this is a fascinating story. We have to learn a little bit about the age when it took place, which the age of patriarchs, and we know what it means. Patriarchy or patriarchal arrangement is a society where there is a boss, let's call it, with this term, a leader of the family, and the family goes down, and the key element of a patriarchy, of a patriarchal family, is that the firstborn inherits everything from his father. Male firstborn. The girls do not inherit anything. This is a typical arrangement of humankind, not just the patriarchal age, of course. It has been common even in Europe or in the West up to not so long ago. So it had plenty of logic. It is logic that you don't want the inheritance to be dispersed. If every son were to have a slice of the property, then it will be soon dispersed and disappear. So the patriarchy has this purpose to keep the wealth concentrated. And it is in this system, in this way, in this arrangement, that we have the story of Tamar and Judah. We start with Judah. Judah was a direct descendant of Abraham, one of the patriarchs, one of the father of the people of Israel, and he was a typical patriarch. He had the flocks, he probably had land, he was a rich man, apparently rich as much as you can be in those remote ages. It was very long ago. And typically, as people would do at that time, Judah had three male children. We may have had female children, but we don't know them. They were not considered important because they didn't inherit anything of the property. So the whole story is concerned about the three sons of Judah. And the oldest one was named E-R, two letters, Ur. Second was called Onan, you may have heard of him, and the third was called Shelah. So what happens? It happens that when the firstborn, Ur, is old enough, he finds a bride in the person of this Tamar, who was outside, was not of the family, of course not. It is the way things were done at that time. I'm sure that the Bible tells us very little about Tamar. We know that from other sources maybe she was not a Jewish, from the Jewish people she was a Canaanite, maybe, but we are not sure about that. Anyway, she comes and she marries her. We can be reasonably sure, actually very sure, that she brought a dowry, because this is typical of patriarchal, male-dominated society. If the males are the most important part of the whole system, then females, girls, have to pay in order to have the privilege to marry a powerful man, a rich man, or the son of a rich man, because it's this son who will inherit everything. So a girl who marries the firstborn will have children who will inherit the property. So you have to pay some money. We can be sure that Tamar paid something, well, by all means. So, and that's the way things were, nothing strange, I'd say. Then unfortunately, dies before having children. The Bible tells us that God killed because had done something wrong, but we don't know what. It doesn't matter. That's not so much of a part of the story. But then Tamar, the girl, finds herself a widow, and now there comes in another mechanism of the patriarchal society, which is called the levirate law. Levir comes from Latin terms, means brother. And the story is that there is a logic, there is economic logic in these stories, which is so functional to everything. It works. There's a logic. So the Tamar paid for a privilege. She didn't have this privilege because her died without having children. Before he could have a child from her. So the law says now Judah must give Tamar to the second-born, who was Onan, the second-born, and it is a right to Tamar, because she paid, to marry another man, another male heir of the family of Judah. So that happens. Onan marries Tamar, and then you know the story of what is Onanism, and we know that Onan, this person, engaged in this Onanism because evidently he didn't want to have children from Tamar. Why that is not so clear. My personal interpretation is that Onan already had children from another woman, and he didn't. If Tamar had children, then the law said that these children from Tamar would have been considered heirs to the property, to the wealth of Judah. And so maybe Onan didn't want that, but he had already children, and he managed. His strategy was to say, well, you see, this lady is barren. It is not our fault. She cannot have children, and so send her back to her family, and we are free from duty and obligations to her. Okay. And at this point, as you probably know the story, Onan dies too before having children with Tamar. And also we're told God was angry at Onan. This time we know that he had some reason to be angry at Onan. And anyway, Tamar is widow for the second time. But Judah has another child, as we said, Shelah, is probably young. And we are told that explicitly, that it was too young to marry you, Tamar. So let's wait. And I think there was also some fear at this point. You marry one son and he dies. Then she marries the other son and he dies too. You can start thinking this Tamar is a witch. And I'm also, it's reasonable to say that Shelah didn't want to marry a woman who was 10 years older than him, maybe. And so we are stuck here. Judah doesn't want to give Shelah to Tamar, or Tamar to Shelah. And Tamar is stuck. Poor lady, what is she going to do? She is getting old, no children, no inheritance. It's a disaster. And then the real story starts, because you probably know this story. We are told that Judah goes to a city, somewhere, we don't know where, not how far, surely not so far. This city has more than one name. I say Timnah. Timnah is the name of this city. He goes there to shear his sheep, because at that time sheep shearing was a specialized work. So there was a festival, there was probably a lot of people, and so he goes there probably with sheep and with other servants and friends, and they all go there. Tamar comes to know that Judah was going to Timnah, and she thinks of a plan, clever, and she disguises herself as a prostitute, which is a bit strange. We will go back to this later on. She wears a veil on her face. She waits for Judah at the crossroad. The Bible tells us in an open space. She meets Judah. She offers herself to Judah. Judah likes her, evidently, and they have sex. That's the way things go. And then Judah tells Tamar, he doesn't know it is her daughter-in-law, his daughter-in-law. They say, well, how should I pay you? He said, I want something. Should I give you a sheep? No, I want a goat. I don't have goats. Well, send me one. Okay, I will send you a goat. And but how will you keep your promise? Lady, how can I say that? And I said, leave me something so that I can be sure that you keep your promise. And so Judah gives her his bracelets, his they call it the signet, the seal. He had a seal of some kind, and the cord of his dress. Very recognizable. It's like, not often people do that with prostitutes. They think, as if you were to leave your credit card with a prostitute, you would not do that. No? Okay, never mind. Judah goes back home, finds a goat, sends a servant of his to the place where he had met this prostitute, hypothetical prostitute, and this guy goes with a goat and say, where is this prostitute? Hey, there was a prostitute here, and people look at him and say, what do you say? There never was a prostitute here. So he goes back to Judah and they say, what is this story? And says Judah, let's say we saved a goat. Let's not speak about that anymore. It seems to be over, maybe, but at this point, it becomes clear, at a moment, that Tamar is pregnant. Ouch! Big problem. Because you know that Tamar was betrothed, actually married to Shelah. She was promised to Shelah. So this was harlotry. Because Shelah was too young. And so you see the mess. So, when big scandal. So Judah goes to see his daughter-in-law, said, you are a harlot, you will die for what you did, burn her at the stake. Wow. The fathers-in-law at that time could do things that our fathers-in-law cannot do, fortunately. And at this point, big scene, you see, Tamar said, no, because you are the father of the child I have in my body. And she shows the bracelet, the seal, and the cord. And at this point, Judas is flabbergasted and says, yeah, you're right. And you see, it's a trick. It's the whole thing has an incredible logic, because at this point, Judah is a sinner because he had sex with the wife of his son, official wife of his son. But he didn't know that because she was veiled, and maybe he was drunk, and he couldn't know that, so he's not guilty. Tamar is guilty of something, but it is her right to have children with somebody of the Judah's family. So she did something, she was her right to do that in a way. And anyway, you cannot kill her because she's pregnant. And so everything goes to the right place. Everything fits to each other. The only one who is not happy is poor Shelah. And you see how the Levirate law works. Now suppose Shelah marries and has children. But Tamar, according to the law, is still the wife of Ur, the deceased Ur. So the children of Tamar take priority over the children of Shelah. And so Shelah is, you understand what I was going to say. Shelah is out. Tamar has children, actually she has twins, and then there is a whole story. But now there is a story about these twins. Eventually they are the ancestors of David and of Jesus Christ. So this is the origin of many things. But let's think about this a little bit more in depth, and you see that there is more, because this story is so unbelievable that you would think, are these people dumb or what? How can you believe that Judah meets his daughter-in-law, and he doesn't recognize her? She has a veil. Okay, come on. Not just a glimpse of her. He has sex with her. It's difficult to think that the veil wouldn't at least a little slip away. Anyway, and then there are many other things which are unbelievable. The veil itself is completely unbelievable. The prostitutes didn't have veils. No way. No, it doesn't work that way. We have documents from that age, and they say explicitly, prostitutes don't wear veils. They're forbidden by law to wear veils. They're punished if they dare to wear a veil, even with death. Married women had veils. This is a tradition which was typical of our, even in Europe, married women have been wearing veils. At marriages, there's still this use that when that the bride wears a veil for a while, not afterwards, but it's common, because there is a logic. As a married woman, you belong to your husband. As a prostitute, you want to show yourself to everybody. That's the first thing. Second thing that makes no sense. There is more than that, like that a prostitute waits for customers in an open space, as the Bible tells us. Open spaces. Being a prostitute is dangerous. You know that, and you don't have to be a prostitute to understand that it is very dangerous. It's a difficult job and dangerous, so you want to do it in some place where you have some protection. Doesn't mean the other people around, because otherwise the next rough customers could mistreat you and not pay you. So that's another thing which is very strange. And there is a logic also in all this. Think about that just a moment. Let's reinterpret the story. We know that we had Tamar, widow. We had Shelah, his future husband, too young. And we have Judah, still not old. His wife died. We know this from the Bible. The Bible tells that to us. And this young widow and this not so old, powerful boss, it's very reasonable to think that they would have succumbed to temptation and have an affair. And maybe they had it for a certain time, and at some point, oops, Tamar becomes pregnant. Wow, now that's dangerous, because as I said, as I was telling you, Judah was committing a sin, not a little thing, because you have sex with the woman of another man, even though the other man is his son, it is still a sin, and that means risking your life. And Same, he could have said, well, I didn't do anything. This is this witch, this harlot. Tamar burned her, but that would not have been so easy with Tamar's family, because they probably know about this story. So they have this burst, this moment of genius. Let's do this. We have an idea. Maybe Tamar had this idea. I think this is the key of the story. Tamar was clever, I think. Say, okay, you go to Timnah, but leave me these bracelets, seal and cord, and I take care of everything. And so Judah goes to Timnah. He comes back. Tamar does not go to Timnah. No need of doing that. When it becomes clear that she's pregnant, after that the whole charade that they sent one man with a goat looking for a prostitute that Judah knew very well did not exist. At that point we have the moment of the scene when everybody says, oh, Tamar is pregnant, and then Judah confesses. At this point everything falls into place, and this little trick, everybody's happy. Nobody believes in the trick, of course. It's one of those social conventions that you don't question, and it works. Tamar has children, and the children have more children. You have this line that goes down for a long time. Things work. And this story is interesting for so many reasons. And one thing that I would like to say about it is about the Bible. How the Bible tells us this stories about normal people. You see, in this story of Tamar, Judah, Sheila, Onan, no saints, no heroes, ordinary people. Everybody was doing what they could. They did their best. And God didn't intervene except causing some damage. In the Bible, often God doesn't help. He puts you to a test. But what is remarkable of the Bible, which is so often a story of ordinary people. You can recognize yourself in Judah, Tamar, Onan, Shelah, all these people, and they do what they can, given the situation. In our case, the world is very different. It's not, we don't live in a patriarchal society anymore. We have different laws, but still we have to adapt, to do what we can in order just to survive, to defend our little happiness, our little wealth, our world, our friends, our family. And we do our best, not always succeeding. And so this is a story that goes to the core of the way human society works, and I would like to tell you a little more about that, because the Bible is something written, and we read the story and we can work the mechanism, understand what it is we are told by the Bible, but there is more that we can know. And you see, this is about the patriarchal society. I told you that patriarchal society exists because in a competitive world, your family, as a family, you don't want to disperse your wealth, because in competition with other families, you would be swamped out by wars, simply by competition. And so this is the reason why very often societies was organized in the past in this patriarchal groups, patriarchal families, which managed relatively, for the time, large flocks and land and wealth in general. Now there is an interesting point. Now think of something. It worked in this way. Father, sons, firstborn takes everything. The others, you have to do whatever you want. You may be servants of the firstborn, or you may move away to seek for your fortune somewhere. Doesn't matter. Father, son, son, son. Now there is an interesting point that, that when person, a human being, as children, the male passes one element of his genetic pattern to the child, which is the Y chromosome. I'm a male, I pass my chromosome to my son, my Y chromosome, my son will pass it to his son, and so on, but not the females, because the females, human females, don't have a Y chromosome. The opposite mechanism occurs for females. Females will pass to their daughters and their mitochondrial cells, which is another genetic elements of the way human organisms are made. So, this is an interesting point. Assume that you live in a patriarchal society, then the male chromosome, the male Y chromosome, will be localized inside this family, whereas the females are exchanged, so the mitochondria are continuously exchanged. The mitochondria spread over, but the Y chromosome stays with the family. And this has an interesting consequence, that if the family for some reason disappears, as I said, famines, wars, epidemics, things like that, sickness, then that Y chromosome will disappear. The chromosome will disappear. And now, today, we have ways to look for the Y chromosome diversity over long time spans, 10,000 years, and we see that at this time in the Middle East there is a drop in the Y chromosome diversity. That is, many males did not leave descendants. It's called a genetic bottleneck. A lot of people didn't leave, males didn't leave descendants, which is perfectly consistent with what the Bible tells us of how the families, the patriarchy, worked at that time, which is impressive. Assume that the whole story of Tamar and Judah had not worked, and Tamar maybe dies, and then Shelah dies too for some reason, and then the Y chromosome of Judah disappears forever from the genotype of humans. And this is impressive how things connect with each other. For at some time people saw this bottleneck, say, what's happening here? Why so many people, so many males don't have descendants? And this you can explain if the sexual activity was done within family group, in exactly this patriarchal arrangement, what you call also in biology, when reproduction is within a limited group, you call it a deme in biology, a deme in analogy with a gene, and that's a typical feature of this system. Eventually, family is a system. Humankind, but society, a city, and a patriarchal family group are complex systems. And the beauty of this is that everything can be seen together within the concept of holobionts. A human being is a holobiont, but also a family is a holobiont. The holobiont is a group of organisms which work together. A family is a group of organisms, humans who work together. A human being is a group of organisms, because we are not alone. We have plenty of bacteria and viruses in our body which collaborate to survive. And eventually we are discovering that the concept of holobiont is explaining a lot of things. You see, even a patriarchal society is a form of holobiont. It's something that works in that way, and its main purpose is survival. You see, eventually we are the result of millennia of millions of years, billions of years. We are here because our ancestors survived. They did their best, competing and more than that, collaborating. The key idea of the Holobiont is collaboration. Evolution, it is a concept which is coming out now with an exceeding strength, is that evolution is not what Darwin said. Not only Darwin, many other people said competition, fighting, and nature in red clothes, and no, it is collaboration. You live, you survive, and I think that's the whole story. The whole point of the story of Tamar and Judah is that how people manage their lives staying within the law. Nobody broke the law. They did what they could. A little they did. They broke the law, yeah. But they strove to survive, and that's what we all do. And I think this is a lesson that we can learn and that we can keep in our minds, because it is our destiny as human beings, as Holobionts, as members of the huge Holobiont, which is society, which is the ecosystem, and eventually the goddess Gaia herself. I thank you very much for listening.